sauce is the key, we whipping it up. The sauce is the key, we cooking it up. The sauce is the key, we cooking it up. Hey, hey, hey.
All right, we're back. We want to talk for a moment about what we ended the last episode with, because there was a little thread there that I almost started to pull, and I decided to hold off and see if we could do a separate conversation about this. Andrew, I'd like you to talk about this for a moment, of the importance in your mind of celebrating the differences of each other, and in the world that we live in today, this sort of woke culture idea that we were starting to allude to a little bit. Would you please extrapolate?
So ultimately, look, I mean, there is right and there is wrong. Slavery is wrong.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if somebody,
for those of you who just turning in, we ended that last episode talking about how from the mindset of people at that time, it was okay.
Right. And if somebody has that view that, they think it's great and they believe in it, to celebrate that difference, obviously, that's not what I mean, right? Because there is right and there is wrong. Now, this is where we struggle today as a society, where, finding the truth sometimes is such an incredible struggle, a really incredible struggle. But ultimately, within the range of, maybe
of course, you have to understand there's extremes to
like
all
slavery or whatever, that it's generally healthy to have a different viewpoint, to be in a business and surround yourself with people who have completely different.
Yeah, diversity and inclusion. It's necessary.
Correct.
And it's financially good. It's fun. I mean, listen, the ESG surveys that have been done on Wall Street find that the more diversity you have at the board level and the management level of your company, the more financially successful you are. Let's just look at it from a purely capitalistic perspective. If you have a board of all white men, they have a worldview that is very singular in nature. There's not a lot of diversity there. If you bring a Latin female or an Indian female onto that board, or somebody that was born in Asia, they're going to see the world in a totally different perspective, and it is going to open up business opportunities for you that you never thought possible. So if we just want to be capitalist pigs on the whole thing, diversity is great because it makes you more money. It's also the right thing to do. Let's just be honest.
I mean, look, let's look at it even in the natural systems. I don't want to go off on a tangent, Derrick, but I was a former environmental scientist and a university adjunct professor. Diversity is the strongest ecosystem are the most diverse ecosystems. So it is actually a natural principle. This is not a philosophical principle. This is down to the very forces of nature. Yeah. So when I say celebrate people's differences, of course, within reason, water is good for you. But if I drank 20 gallons of water, I'm going to the hospital, man. So, the point is that trying as something, and you articulate this better than me, Derrick, and trying to see from other people's perspective empowers you, not just them, you, and to be able to celebrate that difference. Look, at the end of the day, I am not really a conservative. I'm more liberal. Now, fiscally, I probably would align to more conservative ideals socially.
And by conservative, let's not talk about the Republican Party, because
I'm not
the Republican. Trump spent more money than any other president ever. I mean,
I'm not even talking about
is far more conservative on financial stuff than Trump ever was. If you think Trump was a financial conservative, you got to get a mental health professional involved, because you just don't understand the world, right?
No matter now what you just said, even though I believe in what you just said, there's millions of people that don't.
No, there is, and they just don't look at the numbers, right? The numbers don't lie.
And that's where the truth is. People look. We could talk about a whole episode on truth. Sure. The Buddha said that all suffering comes from attachment. I think our suffering that we're going through is that emotional attachment to what they want to believe in someone rather than what really exists. But anyway,
you're pivoting right to me here. You're falling into my trap, Andrew. I've got you.
All right, take it.
So I wonder, I have been spending a lot of time thinking about this lately and been reading a lot of books about this as well. I wonder if this is a mistake. Now, again, people that know me know that I'm very anti-dogmatic. I don't tend to like to believe anything. Even what I will argue emphatically over cocktails, I may at the end of the conversation say, by the way, I don't believe any of that stuff. I've just wanted to argue from that position for a moment. So let me argue from the opposite position of inclusion and celebrating the uniqueness of individuals. I am concerned that it's maybe true that is the root cause of all of our challenges. And that is that we don't see each other as a singular human species, a human race. We separate ourselves by these categories of sex, of class, of skin color, of nation of origin, when in reality, 99.9% of my DNA is identical to yours. It's identical to somebody who lives in Nairobi, Africa. It's identical to someone who lives in Asia. The differences that we have are so minuscule of the minuscule that what we really, I believe, as a society, I wonder if we would do better if we just celebrated the fact that we are all human beings. And let's take away the gender piece. Let's take away the race. I mean, isn't it funny that even in Christianity, it says in the Bible, that in heaven there'll be no male or female. There'll be no slave or free man. There'll be no Jew or Gentile. Everybody will be one big thing. And we won't be able to identify by these things that our entire life we try to identify ourselves by. So I'm a little concerned that maybe the pendulum has swung a little too far. There's a great book out there called Superior right now. It's written by an Indian woman, and it is fascinating. And she actually talks about how that nationalism and a lot more racism has come to light since 23andMe came out. Because for the first time ever, people actually are able. I mean, for me, I was shocked to find out that I'm 18% Greek, especially because there's no Greeks in my family at all. So that made us have a very real revelation that one of my great grandfathers was not the father of my grandmother. And it has been a little bit of a revelation for the whole family looking at my DNA and going, oh, okay. These people weren't, they weren't as moral as we thought. They were, sleeping around. But I do wonder if maybe if we look at the world 100 years from now, Andrew, will we really see the difference between each other? I mean, think about what our thought of beauty is. I mean, I think you look back 40, 50 years ago in magazines, it was all very pale, Northern European women. To find that in a magazine today, that's not what beauty is today. Beauty today is very ethnically diverse and very cultural, and skin is much darker. And I think it's amazing. Where's the next step, right? It's not going to go back. It's going to keep becoming more and more of we have a single race where there isn't the identifier of, oh, well, that person's part of this group because of their skin color and this part, because the other, which I think is a really great thing. I think it means that we lose something from a cultural perspective, right? We lose some culture. We lose local culture, but we gain worldwide culture.
Look, we have the consciousness or lack thereof to chart our own course. Or not. If you really think about it, if we were truly, you talk about the nature of who we are, our DNA, if you really want to get down to it, many humans that are alive and who have ever been alive would have never been able to perpetuate their own genes because, like me, I've had bad eyes my whole life.
Only 40% of men evolutionary ever reproduced.
I would be dead.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I would not have the opportunity to perpetuate my genes. But because of medicine and the life and technology, we are perpetuating all this stuff in our gene pool that ordinarily would have eliminated all of these people. Where when we look at nature, everything we see, that it's an entirely different species, but it's an entirely different species even in how they exist, because only truly the best are surviving. So we're trying to figure out who we are, how we are, with our flaws, with all those things that other races don't have to figure out. We have to figure out. Those are our differences, Derrick, that are subliminal, that we're not understanding. We're not taking that into our collective consciousness, and learning how to celebrate those differences is really what I'm talking about.
Your parents were the melting pot, right? They were allowing any cultural, diversity to sit at that table, and it was melting into one. Right? I mean, isn't that the American way? Right. What I'm saying is, I think societally, we're now seeing that with communication, with how small the world is. We are seeing us becoming a single race of human beings. And I don't mean that in any way, shape, or form in a negative connotation. I think it's actually a really beautiful thing. It's human evolution. All the best traits of all of the different societies around the world, all the different ways of thinking, all of the survival, mechanisms that are genetically encoded in us are now coming together and forming a single, the human race, which is pretty awesome. I mean, it means that our great-grandchildren, if we're fortunate enough to have them, will see the world through a very different perspective. They'll look back in history and say, oh, look, there were the people of this color and people of this color. And they'll be like, that's so cool. Like, it's like, I just think we forget about that. We forget about the fact that we are evolving as a species, and it's a good thing. And we need to celebrate those differences, but also allow them to merge into one.
I agree. And that's why even what we understand is right versus wrong today may not apply 100 years from now.
It makes me worried when I see things like, now that we've done so much DNA testing and we find how close we are to apes, on the biological tree, and how close we are to cows and pigs and all these other things. And we realize that it's just, in essence, they're cousins in some way, right?
We are. I think our genes are 98% us to a pig is higher than 98% of identical gene makeup.
I think, what is it? Fruit flies are our most, we're more, that's why we can test in pigs and we can test in mice and we can do these kind of things, which I also think will become at some point very unethical to do. I think it's slowly become unethical.
It's not only unethical, it's actually declining because of the technology that we have.
Yeah. And I think that's why when I see things like lab-grown meats coming out, I get excited, because I do think as a species, we are still very dependent upon animals for certain things. And if we could replace that, we were dependent upon horses for a long time for transportation. Well, then we weren't. So if we could figure out how to replace that, then at some point, 100, 200 years from now, people will look back and say, what kind of uncivilized animals were those people? And that's just where we're going, right?
It's so true. And, it makes me think about this book I read when I was in high school, and it had such a big impression upon me that I've read it 2 times since.
What book is that, Andrew?
It's called Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And Aldous Huxley was a gentleman that lived in the 50s and 60s, and he wrote the book. I think he published it in the 60s. And he was like a Timothy Leary guy, where he was dropping LSD, philosopher.
Oh, right.
And it's a book, it's a fictitious book that takes place in a futuristic society. And it talks about some of those moral and ethical things that we today would consider so vile and disgusting that for them was not. And it's a story about this in the entire globe. In the future, there was this reservation that still existed with native people that weren't in, and it was corded off from the rest of the world. And there were still some of these natives left.
Wow.
And one of these natives gets brought into the modern world. And it is the story of that native in the modern world and them observing what is considered normal and moral and ethical versus what he considered normal, moral, and ethical. It's a brilliant book. If you've ever,
I'm going to read it.
It's a short read.
Yeah.
It's called Brave New World. Derrick, I got to tell you, even if the camera wasn't going, I enjoy talking to you.
I do too. I love it, Andrew. And I think these are questions, to go back even to that last episode, it is about gaining other perspectives. It's about being able to see your life through the eyes of the future. What do you want to be remembered for? And I think that we have to remember that, when we think about being remembered, we think about our children and our grandchildren. We don't think about our 45th, great-grandchild and how they'll look back on the world and how they'll see the things that we did. So what do we want to be remembered for? Well, let's try to find things to be remembered for that have some level of impact in the future as it does here in the past. I mean, isn't that weird? I'm talking about now as the past. But I think it's important to understand that. And it's important to recognize that the position of people in the future, I think if you would ask Thomas Jefferson, do you really believe in 100 years there'll be slaves? I can imagine it. If you had a great conversation with him, he would have probably said, well, no, of course not. We'll move past this. I mean, this is a very archaic thing, still part of our society today, but we're moving away from it. And I think the same is really happening with just so many different aspects of our world, where we are in that transitionary period. We're in that, the missing link period, right? We're in that moment of time where there's a massive shift in human evolution. And it's going to be for the better. I do think it can be painful right now.
It is painful. Change is hard, man. Change, and I'm going to put an equal sign.
Yeah.
Change equals discomfort. If anybody ever told you change equals easy, they're full
never
of
easy.
Change, and that's why, if we want to move towards something better, get used to being uncomfortable. Learn to see different perspectives, learn to have a deeper understanding of how you want to be remembered and how you're going to apply that to being a husband, a wife, a father, a business owner, and apply it every day. Derrick, always a pleasure, my friend.
It was a great time once again. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate you very much. And for those of you tuning in, make sure you like and subscribe. Check out all the other projects Andrew and I are involved in as well. He's got the Purpose-Driven Leader that comes out. Are you doing that every week now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I've got the Convergence. I've got the Process Fixer. Most of my projects, you can just find me on Facebook at Derrick Mains. Go to my page there and like that. Andrew, what's the best way to find you? LinkedIn, probably.
I'm a big LinkedIner, and I post regularly video, often about customer experience and some leadership topics. I post a lot of video. I write articles. I do pay attention.
ChatGPT writes all my articles.
Oh, so well, there you go. I do pay attention to my inbox, even though it's very crowded. Feel free to contact me, connect with me. And if there's any other way that I can help you or serve you, you know that's how I wish to be remembered. So,
all right. Until next time, thank you.
The sauce is the key, we whipping it up. The sauce is the key, we cooking it up. The sauce is the key, we cooking it up.